Hello and welcome. These four gentlemen each surpassed $1 billion in valuation. And if you look at the top regions to produce such unicorns, it's China and the States. But today, we have four who are originated from Denmark. And yeah, woo! Exactly. It's Klaus, Just Eat, now LetsBuild. And when he was there were 1,000 people in 13 different countries and $500 million in revenue. And now they're even further. We have Mikkel in the middle from Sitecore. He's now with Nordic Makers as an angel. And there were 1,000 people in 16 countries and 3,500 customers and $250,000 in revenue. We have Tradeshift, Mikkel. There are today 1,300 people across 25 different offices, quite an organization to keep track of. 15 different countries, 1.5 million companies on their platform alone. Last but not least, we have David from Unity. There are 3,000 people, or soon to be, at least, in 20 different offices, 18 countries, and 50% of all games is on their platform. So it's some impressive experience we have here today. And all of this success did not happen overnight. They spent years building it. Because every day I sit with hundreds of entrepreneurs. We have co-working spaces across the Nordics. And the people that I meet every day, they work really long hours. And they spend years and years building it up and working so hard. And what is nice, that over lunch, they don't talk about the weather. They talk about, what's that next big goal of mine? Or, how do I fire that manager? That's really hard. And I think it's quite impressive that we have four people here who's willing to share those stories on stage with all of you. Because there is a lot of disappointments, and there is a lot of doubts, and there is a lot of failure in such a journey. So normally you applaud people afterwards, but today I think we should applaud them up front, and we should do it, if not American style, then proper Danish style, with a really big applause for thanking them for being leading stars and for sharing that side of their story today. Just to do like a quick reality check, we'll do a quick round. There's a lot of headlines in the media about big exits and people becoming very rich, driving fancy cars. So could you guys share, do you drive around in Ferraris, or how is it to be a big success? What is your car?
So I mostly drive on my bike to work, but we do have a 2011 Volvo V50.
There you go. Thank you. Mikkel.
I think I might be the guy with a fancy car here. I drive a Tesla.
A Tesla, nice. No, David?
We lease some car. I cannot remember the brand. Then I mostly bicycle.
Cool.
I'm with Mikkel on the Tesla.
On the Tesla, nice. So no Ferraris. Cool. So, can one of you share your personal journey? Normally you talk about the story about all the highlights and how great you did, and then we did this fundraising, and then we became 250 people. I hired them in 1 year, and everything is amazing. Could you tell the same story and then show out the failure highlights? Wow.
I can kick off.
Yes?
So during the 90s, I studied computer science. I created a company with some friends. We didn't have a business plan. We just wanted to code for money so we could buy computers. That was the business plan. And it was just essentially a bunch of geeks doing what they liked. And we grew to about 30 people. And then we came to the whole .com climb. And then we took a massive dive with the rest of the industry after 9/11. I had to sell my shares for 27 kroner. I was employed in my old company for 1 year, and then I left. So that was my first nosedive. Then I tried to work as an independent consultant for a year, made more money in 1 year than I ever made with my own company, traveled the world with the family. That was a big success. That was not a failure. Worked in government for some years, and then we created Tradeshift. And that has just been a series of trials and errors and mistakes and failures and wins and trials and errors. So many of those I can share.
Many of those. Do we have any more early failures that we can learn from?
I'll chip in then. So my first startup went pretty well. We ended up merging with 4 or 5 other companies, and then that company got stock listed in the .com days, so things were very different back then. But the next one was an amazing team, really, really good people, great culture in the company, very visionary and innovative strategy. We wanted to basically build an app store for mobile, but this was 2001. It was just a tad too early, so we crashed and burned in 12 to 13 months, basically because we believed too much in analyst reports from investment bankers that didn't really know what was happening, and also because we were too arrogant in the way we were fundraising. We could have taken in, we got some posh investors on board, and we could have taken in a lot more money, but our view was, no, we'll take in more money in 9 months when we're worth a lot more. Then we're going to avoid dilution. So yeah, that's the way we're going to do it. But then of course 9 months later, everything had crashed. We had really nothing. No one used app for mobile or PDAs. So we were dead.
It's pretty nasty.
Pretty nasty.
Maybe I don't really have maybe one story exactly, but when we were starting Unity, we were 3 founders, and we were such idiots. It was like the stupidity was of such proportions. For instance, everything we knew about the game industry came from a stack of Game Developer magazine copies that we had got somewhere, and they were like from the 90s, and this was 2003, 4. So like we were extremely misinformed about how this sort of thing functioned. And then this ghost Hans, he came and he fooled us out of, he cheated us. He offered to be a consultant for us, and for we would pay his tickets to go to a big conference, and he would sort of market the company, do some stuff, and we paid. And the only thing that came out of it was he got married to a booth babe, which is something. So from that we learned to not entirely, we learned to trust our intuitions because we knew this guy was fake, but we had no other options, like we were so desperate. So yeah, it was just kind of a stumble from one success to another. Like we were, and I can tell the whole story of Unity as a sort of series of bizarre lucky moments and breaks. But yeah, we didn't really fail it, so that's kind of that's a challenge for this topic.
Yeah. So if I was to share my beginnings, my ambition was probably lower than Mikkel. My first company, I just wanted to make enough money to buy candy.
What?
It was a bicycle repair shop. I was 12 years old. And then I have to say, on the topic of today, on failure, I was kind of thinking, me? Failure? I haven't made any failures. And I had to think really hard for a few days, but then I decided, hey, if I think about it as things that I decided not to continue with, then I have lots of stuff I can share. And I think from this first story that what really led me to where I ended up was that I tried a lot of different companies, a lot of different things, and I didn't give up. I just started again and again and again.
Cool. But speaking of giving up, last year we had a stage over here. It was called Get in the Ring. So starters were actually pitch fighting, and sometimes you just need to throw the towel. And maybe you could share with us, because yes, obviously there must have been more success in your respective stories than failure. But at the same time, I'm sure that you've experienced those moments where everything was just really, really dark.
I think it happens all the time.
On a week,
All the time.
It's like you reach a plateau, you're climbing for the next peak, and you think that's the peak, but then the actual peak is just behind. And on that journey, you get to this, as you say, very, very dark moment where you're in a doubt about your own abilities and the chance of survival on this journey. And you can't really share it with many people because the truth of what's actually going on is just
too terrible.
Too terrible.
I always tell my colleagues that I'm happy when the shit on my table has stabilized at a reasonable level. Right? Because every single day there's shit falling down. But if you can kind of get more or less the same amount out, then it's okay. But it's one long journey of dark moments. And you can ask yourself why you're doing it, but of course that's because when it really works and you do something truly great with some people you like, that's one of the best things in life.
Oh. That's interesting, because what made you overcome some of those dark moments? Is there, I don't know, I mean, obviously our friends and family loves us and supports us, but a lot of other people don't believe in startups at the early days. Can you mention someone who made a difference to you, respectively? Where you're like, this person trusted in me, and that made a difference?
I could maybe actually tell a story. So we somehow managed to build the first product. We put it on the market. We'd run around. I'd been running around the world, going to all the conferences and trying to convince some people to use it, and nobody really wanted to because it was not very good. But then it got a little bit better, and the iPhone happened, and we kind of became the first engine to make iPhone games. And so we got the company to like 30 people, and things were good. We could pay the bills finally. Salaries were being paid on the first of the month or last of whatever, instead of the 10th. And we got interest from basically the world's best venture capital firm, Sequoia Capital, and they gave us $5 million. So suddenly we had like cash that we would not just fail sort of accidentally. And I moved to San Francisco, which had been a plan of mine for a while. We had a small team there, and then when Sequoia invested in us, we sort of formed the thesis of how we would kind of have the engine, the game engine, but also like give services like payments, analytics, ads, and stuff like that to the developers. And then I moved to San Francisco, and it all turned to shit. It was the worst year of my life. So we grew a lot, from 30 to 70 people in a year. We'd always been sort of very disorganized, but sort of, we would swivel the chair to communicate. My co-founders were in Denmark. I was there. We stopped communicating entirely. Like, nobody could get a hold of each other. All the decisions we made, the strategy decisions, like, they were all kind of wrong. They were smart, but they were wrong. And we didn't know how to execute them. And fortunately, we didn't try. We mostly just gave up on all these plans.
How did you get out of that?
The investors were pretty frustrated with us, with me. Like they were, as one is always, when you invest in a company, you're always a little infatuated with the founders because they're so cool and energetic and so on. And then they see this guy just running around being entirely confused. And they were like, we made a mistake with this guy. Like, this is terrible. So the good thing is the product development kept going. The sales actually kept growing because finally we sort of had product market fit. But I was going to drown, right? And then it was actually, we had board meeting after board meeting. The investors were more and more confounded. What the fuck is going on with you guys? You made these decisions. The next board meeting, we sort of just talk about some other topics and so on. In this case, and they of course brought up the topic of me resigning or replacing me. And in this case, it was actually my co-founders who stepped up and said, no, we want to be a founder-led company. So we'll work with David and we'll figure it out. So we just implemented some very simple methods together. First, I took the whole, they took all the work off my table. So I had no tasks, no shit on my table. And then we sort of added it back together. And sort of a year later, we had fixed it all, and everyone agreed that I was doing well. But those are my co-founders who just sort of stepped up and saved me.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't obviously deserve it at the time, but fortunately, I was able to pay back later by being a good
That's
CEO.
a very good learning story. That's a really cool story.
And I really respect the investors because they were frustrated, but they were patient. They gave us, months.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I hope there's more of these stories.
Yeah.
I hope not.
Yeah, so I think at about the same size of company as you were, we were about 20, 30 people in Denmark. I ran into some really difficult management issues.
Oof.
And in many ways, it was beyond me. I just couldn't figure out what to do. And so I had a team coach come in and help us out. And he was phenomenal. He both helped me personally become a better manager, and he also helped the team at large. So he helped the other managers we had in the office, and we got things straightened out within a matter of a few months, and it was awesome.
Wow. How often did you see this coach?
From back then, I think from 2003 until the very end. So he stuck with the company. I used him every once in a while.
So I have some China stories. I've been building out our business in China, and before you enter the Chinese market, first of all, don't. But if you do, then there's a book about doing business in China for dummies, and it has like a 10-item list of things that can go wrong and probably will go wrong. And I even took a course, sort of a short course at Berkeley on doing business in China. So I was well prepared. Wow. I had done my research. I entered the Chinese market in 2013 when we were 60, 70 people in Tradeshift. I don't know how we managed to convince investors and the board that we should do something as crazy as that. I set up a research and development team, and then I started looking for joint venture partners so we could operate commercially in China. And we met one joint venture partner that was more crazy than the other, and we did not really make any headwind. So I did a reset of the team, and I put myself in there and say, okay, I need to find this partner. And then in late 2015, we actually found a partner. We found two partners. So we started two joint ventures at the same time. One in Chongqing, which is a small city with 20 million inhabitants in Western China that no one has really heard of. And it was Tradeshift Finance China. Really cool. Do supply chain financing, connected to the Belt and Road, and everything was good. But our joint venture partner there, they were just very dishonest. They actually just wanted our IP, access to our platform. They wanted our brand for different purposes. So we set up the joint venture, and now it's gone rogue. I have no control whatsoever over this entity, and it's just doing their own thing for several years in China. So, and I've flown to Chongqing, and it's not a quick flight to go there. Many, many times. I've wasted, we've wasted in Tradeshift years into this failed joint venture. And then at the same time, my other joint venture out there, which was with a semi-government entity, also just blew up in flames. Again, you could not trust your partners, and we gave the leverage away that we had in the market. So, but I could not quit. You ask, so how do you stay in business? If you're a founder, you cannot quit. If you do, then you're a punk. I can't remember who said that. That's, you have to stick it out. So I was not in a position where I could leave. So I think that's the real difference, and you need the support of your co-founders to just stay put and work your way through it and not give in. So be careful with China.
There's only two ways China can go if you go there. Either the people you hire are not Chinese enough, or they're too Chinese.
True.
There's no perfect middle point.
Yes.
Man.
That was a lot of China bashing. Let's change the topic slightly.
We've done well in China, but it's been rough.
Do you have more China stories, or are we done with China?
No, specifically in Just Eat, I said we'll do the whole world except US, Russia, and China.
Oh.
And that's actually what we did.
How come?
US because it was a competitor market. If you want to go to the US, you have to go all in as a company. Russia, corruption. China, I don't know of any software-based consumer goods companies that won the Chinese market. So, and the rest of the world is pretty big, right? It's Brazil, it's India, it's all of Europe, Canada, and so on. So there's plenty you can build a business on.
I have to say, in my experience, France is the most difficult market.
We did very well.
France is number 1,
Yeah.
Japan number 2, and then China.
And then China. Wow. You started a little bit, Mikkel, that as a founder you cannot quit. You just have to, persist and endure whatever you need to endure to make it happen. What is the price of this?
Your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think every founder in this room, they know that they're making a lot of sacrifices. There's birthdays that you don't attend. There's family events. Your vacations that you had planned that get ruined. You have to fly home from wherever you were with your family, and that's tough. It's not fun. And so that life-work balance, it's a challenging thing.
I stopped working in Sitecore in mid-2017.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that I've had 2 years of PTSD. And I still have a little bit of email anxiety, so whenever I come home, it's not the email that I open. About once a week, I look at my emails.
Okay.
It's pretty tough.
There's one circumstance in which you can leave as a founder, and that is if you replace yourself with somebody better. And I pulled that off in 2014, and it was a grand thing, but still took a couple of years to get over.
Yeah.
Yeah, phantom pains all over.
Yeah.
But that's actually also part of being a founder, because that's your job. That your job is constantly to replace yourself in whatever job you have. And then you get into this sort of, your ego is threatened here, because what is my next job? Well, what will I be doing? I started out as CTO in Tradeshift. I studied computer science, but then my other co-founder, Gert, he was much better in this role than I was. So I had to redefine myself, build a sales department, but I knew nothing about sales. What did I know? I was a geek. So I hired someone that could do sales. They built the sales department, and then suddenly I was without a job again. So constantly replacing yourself, and you're in between, you doubt your own abilities, and what is my contribution to this company?
Yeah, I pretty much found for the first, I think, 12 years, every 18 months, I found myself doing something completely different from what I had done prior.
So there are many lessons through this journey that is tough, right? For instance, also developing as a leader. If you have a technical background, you're talking about it. Personal development. When we created Tradeshift, we promised the first employees that we always had a very flat organization. We would never have an HR department. That was probably one of the worst promises we could have ever made.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think we've suffered over the years because of this promise. Trying to keep it flat for too long, trying to keep an HR function out for too long, then when shit starts burning everywhere, you're too late with reinforcing leadership structures, HR structures, finance structures, all of that. So,
cool. There's the failures that you know of, maybe no one else knows of. Then there's the ones that make it to the headlines when they become public, and you kind of need to stand up and say, fuck, we fucked up, I'm sorry. Would you say that the public failures or the internal failures are the worst?
Internal.
It may vary. Definitely internal, yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that the case, though? Is it
I think it's because what goes public is usually just a small thing.
Yeah, no, that's probably true. Yeah. I was thinking whether there was something else, like when you're working with a public crisis, like you sort of at least you're working. I don't know, like you got a good team together, like you got the best people on this, and all the internal things are always like, you know, some failure with people. But I don't know. Maybe we've just been lucky that we didn't have a proper public crisis.
Yeah, it could be unexpected.
Yeah.
Can you talk some more about people failure?
Ugh. Yeah, I mean, at some point you need to upgrade your leadership, and you need to add some capabilities that you surely don't have because you're an idiot. And so you hire these fancy guys who come highly recommended and have long CVs and are completely broken humans or something. It's rough, you know. At some point we were going to hire a VP marketing and a VP sales, and I was warned that now I was about to hire a VP bullshit and a VP bullshit. and just recruiting was so hard. Like, you know, you meet all these people and you have no idea what you're looking for, and they're all so fancy. So yeah, you make mistakes, and then there's a certain arc to these mistakes that seems to be very. I mean, there's a few ways this can go, but in a way, the worst is that now this person comes in, and everyone is excited and looks very good, and then nothing really happens for a really, really long time, and then. Like maybe some team is getting built and some analysis is going on, and it's really quiet. Then at some point you're like, okay, what is going wrong? And you go look, and suddenly there's a plan produced, and like there's a meaningful conversation and an eye to eye. You know, now it's gonna work, and of course this is a head fake. And now, but it gives this situation like 2 more months to fester, and now you've gone like 6 months in or 9 months in. And now, of course, you have to fire the person, and this person now has poisoned an entire team. You know, everyone around you is unhappy, and this person has reflected extremely badly on you as a leader. So now everyone is doubting your abilities, that you didn't see this idiot walking around for 9 months.
When everyone else did.
And everyone, because this person is two-faced, right? So he's always smiling at you, and he's like this terrible person to everyone else. I don't know if this is an arc you've seen, but...
Yeah.
Oh man.
There is a saying that the best way to reward a high-performing person is to fire a low-performing person on that same team. But it's a tough one, and I think one of the things that I'm still working with is the theme of radical candor, giving feedback in the situation. There's a wonderful book called Radical Candor, written by Kim Scott. Highly recommend it. It's all about leadership and being upfront in the moment with people on how they're performing, because if they don't get your feedback, they don't learn. They cannot change their behavior. And if you let it sit for 3 or 6 months, this behavior that you're in that meeting with some peers and you have this, that was not good, but you don't tell them afterwards. That's you failing. It's not their failure. And with all the soft leadership approach we have here in the Nordics, I think we can learn a lot from being more straightforward and more frank and more candid.
I think one of the personally most painful experiences as a CEO of a startup that grows big is that when you have a leadership team in place and things are working well, then after a few years, just some of the leaders will not be able to grow into larger and bigger roles with broader responsibilities, and you need to replace them. And they're great people, you like them, you might even be friends with them, and they did their job really well, but they're just not fitting into this next phase. And I think in many ways that's probably one of the most painful things to experience.
Yeah, those are sad moments.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
You tell them that they...
Well, if you want to keep growing the company, you have to try to find a good way out. And
in some cases they can be saved, it's rare, but I mean, we managed to pull off saving a couple of people, like kind of demoting them, but still giving them something big and important.
Exactly.
But in most cases that's not possible. In most cases it doesn't work.
And when you're in really bad luck, then you end up replacing the person with the person you just described.
You undoubtedly will do that also, and then you look like a total schmuck.
Yeah, exactly.
And a jerk.
Yeah.
We just have 2 minutes, and we've been talking a lot about people, and I've heard several people backstage talk about that you need to hire slow and fire fast. So can you maybe be a bit specific? Can you come with final pieces of good advice?
It's a cliche, right? But I think basically it's true. Whenever I let someone go, I always regret it later that I didn't do it a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
I've had one manager in my entire career that fired fast. And man, he was fast. It was like after 2 weeks, boom, out. 3 weeks, boom, out.
Wow.
It was crazy, yeah. He's still like that. He's been like that his whole life.
Amazing.
But some middle ground between being too slow and maybe being a little too fast.
Can you be specific? Anyone?
In our case, we sort of learned from all the mistakes we've done to make like kind of a pretty structured process. Once we identify a problem, we'd actually kind of start an official proceeding almost, and there's a conversation and a letter and a plan and a timeline and check-in points, and because otherwise you just let it slide, right? Because you're busy, everyone is busy, nobody enjoys that conversation. So yeah, we learned to do this kind of process, and that trying to sort of make it so that 50% of the people would survive that process and 50 not. As in, like, that's, you want to tune the, like, you know, you don't want to start a process if you're almost certain they're going to succeed necessarily. And if you're really sure they're going to fail, you want to just get rid of them right away. But the process should be sort of that there are good odds.
Yeah.
And I consider, like, the path, the process I told you about earlier, I consider that that was my sort of saving plan, yeah. And I was always proud of telling employees that, like, you know, I had one of those. It's fine. You can do it. You can do it too.
You can do it too.
Yeah.
Cool.
But you talk about hiring fast.
And you have 1 minute, by the way.
Okay, so you really need the value fit and the culture fit. You can hire fast, but if you hire someone that doesn't share your values, then you'll really be in trouble. Then you'll go through the firing phase, and you better be quick at that. And I think most of us, again in the Nordics, we're not good enough at firing fast.
Very nice. So let's say thank you for sharing some stories that was not told until now.